Warning: the following podcast has been rated listener R due to strong language, violent situations, drug references, sexual innuendos, and who knows what else. Listener discretion is advised. With that being said, hang on, sugar tits, because we're about to get wobbled.
What's up, guys? It's Wobbled back again with another episode of the Let's Get Wobbled podcast. Episode 18 this time around. I know it seems like we just don't fucking post very often. I think that's the number one complaint that I get the most is people saying, like, you're just not consistent. It's hard to keep up with the podcast because you're not consistent. I see you post every once in a while. I don't really catch up because I'm not sure when you're going to post the next one. It's so hard. I really wish that I could get on a schedule and stick with it. But it's hard. These episodes are really hard when you don't have a guest. And I just feel like I don't have anything to talk about. I mean, there's some things in life that are going on that I can fill you guys in on, but I just don't have much going on right now. But we're going to throw something together for an episode. That way you guys have something to listen to. Those that are still sticking around, I appreciate. Just kind of like what's going on. It's been almost a month since I've recorded. The last one that I did was at the Christmas party. But it's been a rough month, a rough start of 2025. That's for sure. Things have just been shitty so far, but I'm hoping we get the shitty stuff out of the way at the beginning of the year, and then that way we can enjoy the rest of it. But I'll take you guys through all the shit that's going on. But to start the podcast, I want to talk about the fucking weather and what it's been like in Southeast Ohio for me. So the last week has been freezing cold. I shouldn't say the last week. Pretty much all of January has been pretty cold, but the last couple weeks have been extremely cold in the negative degrees. And for those of you listening in Ohio, you guys know it's been freezing cold. This is just the time of year that I guess everybody that rides a motorcycle hates. It just is one of those things when the seasons roll around, there's just not much really to do. And I have on my list here, like, everything that I have basically wraps around the weather and the time of year, I guess. But the bad part about everything getting cold is you can't get the bike out. So for me, seasonal depression is a big thing. Like, before, I could get off work, go for a little motorcycle ride, put around town, do something, come back, make dinner, hang out at the house, whatever, watch TV. But now it's like I come into work, I do my 10-hour shift, I go home, then there's nothing to do. Like, I don't know, I make dinner, but after dinner's up, then what do I do? There's nothing to do. It's too cold to go outside and do anything. So seasonal depression is a big thing. It's hard to combat. Trying to find other hobbies is difficult. One of the things that I like to do to pass time in the wintertime, especially, I'm not a diehard gamer, but I try to find something that I can keep my mind occupied with throughout the winter. So I've been playing a lot of Xbox here lately. And trying to find games that Kristen and I can play. We found a game called Plate Up, and it's kind of like a restaurant-style game. One person's in the kitchen cooking, the other person's taking orders and stuff. It's fun, but it's also very testing to our relationship, too, because, I mean, I'm very competitive, she's very competitive, and when we don't do good, things kind of turn sideways. But we've enjoyed playing it a little bit. We kind of got out of the groove of playing it, and I picked back up. I'm a big fan of the Assassin's Creed games. I really enjoy the older ones. A buddy of mine and I had actually talked about it before. I liked the way the older Assassin's Creed games played. The story mode, I guess you'd say. In the older Assassin's Creed, it was very much from one mission to the next, to the next, to the next. It wasn't so much a free roam kind of ordeal. You couldn't have more than one mission going on at one time. And I just kind of feel like that's how these newer Assassin's Creeds are playing. So I hadn't really dove into the newer Assassin's Creeds until I was just bored looking for something to do. And before it got really cold and I started having issues with water lines and stuff at the house, I decided I was going to give one of the newer Assassin's Creeds a try. And I know a buddy of mine told me that Valhalla was really good. He enjoyed the game. And he said it was one of his favorites. So I was going to give it a try, just kind of see how it played out. And I have fell in love with the game. It tells a great story. It's got a really good story mode that goes through it. it does kind of jump around a little bit. You can have multiple missions going at one time, but I try to keep myself focused on start a task, complete a task, get all the way through it, then start a different task. Try not to get too wrapped up in doing multiple things at one time. I have hard enough time doing that in the real world, let alone a video game. So I'm sure some can agree with me on that. But really, the biggest issue with the last couple of weeks that I've had is I knew it was going to get cold right around the national championship game. Um, I'd been working a bunch of overtime at work, doing snow removal and putting salt out. So I knew we'd already talked it was going to get into freezing temperatures and even into the negatives. But the national championship game had came. I'm a diehard Ohio State fan, so of course I wanted to watch the game, and luckily the Buckeyes pulled it out. I think we played a great season. I'll talk more about that towards the end of the podcast. It'll become a wrap up, but um, I knew it was going to get down to cold temperatures, and I just forgot to do anything about it. Woke up the next morning on a Tuesday, and the water lines in the house were froze. So, me coming from the background that I was, and the house that we lived in before, the water lines would freeze on a regular occasion when it would get that cold if we didn't let the faucets drip. So it was just a normal thing for me. I was like, okay, water lines are frozen. It's okay. We'll get through it. So with my fiance, I'm not quite sure that she really dealt with it so much per se than what I did. But when the water lines froze, it just seemed like we were hoping that it was going to get warmed back up and enough to get the pipes to thaw. And it wasn't. I mean, you could just tell the way the weather was looking, it was not going to do us any favors. So we waited and waited, had water or went without water for almost a week. And then finally, I just decided I have got to try to do something to get these water lines thawed so that way we can get water in the house and I don't have to keep going to my dad's apartment to go shower or worry about where I'm going to be able to get my laundry done at. Or cooking was extremely hard too because we don't like to let dishes pile up. So we couldn't really cook a whole lot because there really wasn't a way we could do dishes without having water. So it was just a fiasco, but I finally decided that I was going to take the day off work and try to do everything that I could to get the water line installed. And a friend of mine from work told me that a torpedo heater would work. If you take the torpedo heater, point it at your water lines, put the temp on nice and low, don't get it super hot to where bad things can happen, but just kind of let it get low and let it heat up gradually. He said it should melt the ice that's in there and get your water back. So I got up just this past Thursday. I took off work. I got up, borrowed a torpedo heater from my friend. Thank by graces, Jonathan Poling. I've had him on the podcast before. He knew a guy that I could borrow a torpedo heater from. He even helped me. We pointed that torpedo heater under the house for probably a half hour and just could not make any progress on getting any water in the house. And I couldn't figure out why. I mean, that thing was blowing some decent heat, pointing it up underneath the house, and we couldn't get anything. And I'm like, why are we still having issues? Why is there not enough heat going to where it needs to go? I could see the main water line that come up through the house. It come up through the ground, made a 90, probably ran a foot and a half to the left, and then made another 90 and went straight up into the house. So I knew that's where the issue was. I just couldn't figure out exactly where it was froze over at. So finally, after 30 minutes of playing with this torpedo heater and trying to get it squared away, we looked and saw that right at the base where the pipe comes up out of the ground at, there was ice that was formed around that pipe. And my first thought was, well, if there's ice on the outside of the pipe, that means that somehow water must have gotten there and froze. So I'm hoping the pipe didn't bust because that's a big thing that you're going to play. If your water lines freeze, there's a chance that they could possibly bust. So was hoping that it didn't bust, but Jonathan told me, he's like, hey, best thing you can do is probably get a heat lamp, point it directly at the base of that pipe where it comes up out of the ground. He said, hopefully that's where the water's froze at, and hopefully you can get it thawed enough where you can at least get some water. So went to the hardware store. This is after buying heat tape. So I left work early. I took off Thursday. I left work early Wednesday and bought heat tape and wrapped around the pipes. Tried that tactic first. I don't know if something's wrong with the heat tape that I bought or what it was, but I applied the heat tape like I was supposed to, plugged it in, felt the heat tape getting warm. I was like, okay, cool. I'm not going to stand here and babysit it, but it should do its job. I mean, you would think that it would. It's supposed to do what it's supposed to do, I guess. After letting that heat tape run overnight, I got up the next morning and it still wouldn't work.
Are you tired of going to Great Clips and them fucking your shit up?
Are you fucking tired of going home and feeling like you ain't even worth getting laid? Come on down to Good Old Boys Barbershop and get you a fresh cut.
Good Old Boys Barbershop, 309 North Street, Caldwell, Ohio, 740-509-2669.
Find him on Facebook, book you an appointment, and get your shit fixed. Walk in the door feeling like shit, you're going to walk out the door feeling like $1,000,000. Coming from Wobble himself, this place is the place to fucking be. If you're in Noble County, if you're in Guernsey County, if you're in Monroe County, Ohio, it's worth the fucking drive. Get your ass down, book you an appointment, sit in this chair, and let this man cut you up right. That's Good Old Boys Barbershop, downtown Caldwell, just off the square. So then that's when I decided to do the torpedo heater route, and hopefully that was going to take care of it. So finally got the heat lamp put on at the base of the pipe, went inside. I was tired. I'd pulled a muscle on my back like the week before. I've been dealing with that shit too. And let me tell you, being 27, I never thought that a pulled muscle would hinder me as much as it fucking has here lately. I can tell that I'm getting older. I'm not going to say I'm getting old, but I can definitely tell that I'm getting older because a fucking pulled muscle has had me laid up for almost a week. Not to where I can't go to work or anything, but like I cannot get rid of this pulled muscle. I've tried icy hot. I've tried a heating pad. I've tried all these different things that used to take care of pulled muscles or pinched nerves or whatever. And I can't get fucking rid of this thing. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I've been dealing with it and just trying to put it off and hopefully it'll go away. But hopefully I can figure out what the fuck to do with that. I need to start stretching more, I think. Maybe that's my issue. But finally I went in. I said, fuck it. I'm going to take a nap, relax a little bit. And then hopefully when I get up, I'll have water magically. Because, I mean, I've been dealing with this for almost a week trying to get shit figured out. So my brother calls me, wakes me up from my nap. He's like, hey, what are you doing? What this and that? Did you get water back yet? I said, no, still don't have water yet. And thankfully, like him and my dad and even Kristen's mom and dad, they were willing to let us go shower at their place or do whatever we needed to do, whether it be laundry or whatever. Let us use their water. So it wasn't like we were going to go without, but it was still just an inconvenience, really. But no more than I hung up the phone with my brother, I could hear something in the living room or like over towards the living room in the kitchen area. I was like, what the hell is that? So I got up and went and looked, and it was water was coming out of the faucet finally. It must have finally broke loose just after that phone call. So I called my brother back, and I was like, hey, I did get water back. Everything's good. So I've got it figured out now where those heat lamps are run on the same switch as my front porch light. So if I turn my front porch light on, then I know that those heat lamps underneath are on. And right now, while it's below freezing temperatures, I just said, fuck it, and I'm going to let those heat lamps run because I'm not going to deal with this bullshit again. Hopefully I can get that shit to stay thawed, which, you know, fingers crossed and knock on wood, it's been thawed and hadn't had any problems with it. I need to go up underneath there and put a bunch of insulation around those pipes. So that way, hopefully we don't have the same problem that we've had. But for right now, we've got it fixed. So hopefully it stays like that. Another big thing when it comes around this time of year, we heat with a wood fire furnace, I guess you would say, or basically a wood burner. I bought the house in December of 23. So I did the winter of 24, and now I'm into the winter of 25 with this house. The issue that I've run into also is trying to find out exactly how much wood that I need to get me through the entire winter. So when I first moved in, I didn't have any wood. I only had what the previous owner had already cut and stacked there. I thought that would hopefully get me through, and it didn't. I ended up having to buy firewood last year. Speed forward to this year, luckily, I haven't had to purchase any firewood up to this point. I did buy some off of a friend of mine. He had cut some off of his property, said he was wanting to get rid of it, and it was just shit that I didn't have to cut and split. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll come get it. I got some slab wood from the Amish. That stuff really helps just for kindling and some other, I mean, it'll help a little bit. It'll burn, but not as good as actual logs will. So I've been trying to play a balance of how much wood do I need versus how much that I've been getting. And I mean, I've ran short every time last year and running short this year. Luckily, I ran into a spot where I knew I was going to either need to buy firewood or going to have to go cut some and split it myself. I come home from work one Thursday. It was my Friday, being Thursday, but got home from work. I just showered, just gotten some basketball shorts and a cut off t-shirt. And I was just getting relaxed, and my brother pulled in the driveway, and he came inside. He's like, "Hey, I need you to get your winter clothes on and come help me." And that's all he said. I was like, "Fuck, man, I just got home from work. I just want to relax. I don't want to do shit." So I go outside, and he's hauling a log splitter behind his Jeep. And I'm like, "What the fuck? Where'd this guy get the money for this?" So I asked him, and he said that my dad had bought it for the both of us to use. He said that he knew that splitting with an axe is difficult, and he said he wanted to do something for us. So he got us that log splitter on Facebook Marketplace. He wasn't able to go pick it up, but called my brother, and he said, "Hey, go pick up this log splitter. It's your and your brother's. You guys use it as you see fit. Get your use out of it." So at first, when I saw it, I was like, "Man, I can't believe my dad spent money on a log splitter. It'll be fine. I'll just use an axe. I don't really need this log splitter. It's not a necessity." After splitting wood for 2 hours and seeing how much shit I got done in 2 hours with a log splitter versus splitting with an axe, and how much better I felt, even with a pulled muscle in my back, I'll be damned if I ever touch an axe again. If I have to, I have to. But like, this wood splitter is so nice. I even called my dad and I was like, "Hey, I know I told you that I probably would never use it, but now I'm going to use it every time." And he laughed about it, but he's like, "I told you needed one." And I told him, I was like, "I didn't think it was a necessity, but you don't realize." We were talking about it one day at breakfast with the guys. We were like, it's crazy to think of how people invented things or how things came about. One of the guys mentioned at breakfast, how did somebody create a record player? And all you do is put a little needle on the record and it works. How did people come up with this shit? How did people come up with the wood splitter? Like, everybody just was swinging axes, I'm assuming, before, and that was just the way of it. Somebody must have said, "Hey, there's probably an easier way to do this," and finally sat down and tried to figure something out. But just these inventions and things that people are making, it's crazy how much easier things can be versus the way that you're used to doing them. And it goes to show, of course, everybody doesn't like change. Everybody likes the way things are going because it's just the way that things have always been. How many times have you heard that? Like, "Well, we do this because that's the way it's always been done. We do this because that's the way I was taught." Sometimes there's ways to change things up that makes things easier for you. Work smarter, not harder. I've always said that. If there's a way to do something easier, why are you wasting your time doing it the hard way? Now, granted, sometimes doing it the hard way is better, but I will continue to use this log splitter. And I told Dad, I said, "There's no way I'm ever going to be able to repay you for this, but I said, if there's one way that I can, I said, I will definitely get your money's worth out of use on it." So luckily, I haven't had to buy firewood yet. I'm cutting up some old stuff that was stacked in the yard that was just too big for me to use an axe on. I'd chop at it for 2 hours and probably get 3 logs done up. When with this log splitter, it takes zero effort at all, and it splits right through it. We cut a tree down in the yard earlier. Matter of fact, it was just yesterday, I think. Camden come over and give me a hand. There was a dead tree that was in the yard. We just said, "Fuck it, we're going to go ahead and cut it up and split it up because it's easier now." But luckily, haven't had to buy any firewood this year. We're almost at the end of January. I'm hoping that I can just get through February, and March is one of those. I mean, I'm probably going to have to run the wood burner through half of March. I'm hoping maybe 3/4 of March and then be done. But we always get that late fucking winter in March where nobody's expecting it, but it always comes and everybody freaks the fuck out. But I'm going to try to figure out some sort of solution to my shortage of wood problem. Both of my grandmas live on farms. I have people around me that have farms that say I could come cut trees anytime that I want, but it's just the fact of having to go out and do it. Now with this log splitter, I think it would make things a little easier. But hoping to do that. We have the wood burner and we have a furnace as a backup. I just don't like to run the furnace as much just because it's an older furnace. Luckily, it's been grateful to us and it's worked every time. But I try to use the wood burner as much as I can just to kind of help keep the gas bill down. And that's kind of the hard thing too, is, you have to fill that indoor wood burner once every 8 hours. So I can go to work, When I go, right before I go in, I fill it full wood, let it go. When I come home from work, it's been 10 hours. So sometimes you still have a little bit of ash in there. You've got some coals down in there that you can work with, try to get a fire restarted. Sometimes you have to relight a fire, which is a pain in the ass to do, but trying to keep that burning through the day. And then once you get home, either relighting it or building another fire, letting that go until you decide to go to bed, filling it full again, letting it go all the way through the night. You can see where you burn up firewood fairly quickly, but hopefully we can get that problem figured out. I'm going to start in the spring. Kristen and I talked, summertime is super busy for us with motorcycle season, and we never want to cut firewood in the summertime because who would want to cut firewood when it's 80 degrees? But when it turns around and you need it in the middle of fucking January, February, it's definitely helpful to have. So I think we're going to start in the spring, try to get a bunch of wood cut and split, store it away so it can dry out and everything, and then hopefully have enough for next year's winter. Hopefully. We'll see what happens. But so I covered the freezing cold temps, the water freezing in the house, the pain in the ass, dealing with the wood burner and the wood splitter. Wood burners are a pain in the ass sometimes, but it's nice to have. Luckily, we haven't had an electric shortage or power go out with the weather temps. But if we did, it's the one thing that's nice about having the wood burners. We're going to have heat regardless. Seasonal depression, I'll kind of touch back on it again. Like I said, it's just one of those things where if you're a summer person, winter in Ohio is horrible. I mean, even in Florida, they were getting snow and ice. Georgia, Texas, places that don't expect to get snow were getting snow this year. And I think that it really just shows that sometimes you have a plan and sometimes your plan goes to shit real quick. And then you wonder what the fuck's going to happen after that. But seasonal depression is tough. If you're going through it, believe me, I'm going through it with you. It's fucking tough. I'm ready to get the bike back out. The only thing good about the winter time that I know of is tax time. Tax time rolls around, and luckily I've always been really fortunate with the jobs that I've had that I've been able to put extra money back so that way I get a tax return at the end of the year. Use the tax return for motorcycle parts normally or servicing the motorcycle. It's also going to help out with some of the things that we have planned for in the summer. I can set that money back and help with some of the motorcycle trips. We are, as I'm recording this podcast, 108 days left until our Cleveland Police Officer Memorial with Playboy Eric Heimdahl, Scout. Hopefully going to take the prospects with us. Actually, I haven't mentioned this on the last episode, but we only have one prospect now. One of our prospects got patched into the Christmas party, so congratulations. Pumbaa is our newest member. Patch member of the Warhogs Motorcycle Club. I want to congratulate him. I didn't congratulate him in the last episode because I didn't want him to listen to the podcast before the Christmas party and spoil the surprise. But obviously, we all knew what the fuck was going on, and we knew we were going to vote you in there. We just didn't want to say nothing. But it's good to have you here. I'm glad to have another member who is tied into the same line of work and works at the same place that I do. It's just good to have like-minded people. He's a great guy. The other prospect that we have is also a great guy, works the same place that I do too. So look forward to getting both of them on. We also have a hang around that's been hanging out with us and getting to know the club. I know that person is wanting to get their shit under control first in their personal life and then start devoting time to the motorcycle club. So looking forward to that too. But got some big things coming in the summertime. We just got to fucking get there. That's the hardest part. Sometimes life's about fucking surviving. It's, you don't have to fucking flourish and you don't have to do great all the fucking time and you don't have to be on top all the time. Sometimes life's just living one day at a time. And it seems like during this time of the year, it's fucking difficult. It's fucking hard to get through sometimes, but we'll get through. But like I said, we're 108 days away from Police Officer Memorial. This is the 40th annual memorial. If you're in the Cleveland area, if you're anywhere up in the Akron, Canton, I don't give a fuck where you're at. I want to see you guys at Cleveland's Police Officer Memorial. Come hang out. Let me know where you're at. We'll come hang out. But it's a great time. We enjoy it. And can't wait to have it this year. Breeze Ride and Bike Show are approximately 130, 145 days away-ish, somewhere around in there. Just my countdown that I have. And then our big Hocking Hills trip is 178 days away. Can't wait for that. I think that's going to be a blast. I've still got some planning and stuff to do as the route that we're going to take, stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to that too. The last thing that I want to cover is football is kind of wrapping up around this time of year, and I was talking about college football, so I want to touch on just the college football playoffs, what my final thought was on there, the NFL playoffs as we are now heading into the Super Bowl weekend. So cover both of those. We'll get this wrapped up. I know a lot of people, if you're Ohio State fans, really hated the way that the regular season ended for Ohio State Buckeyes. And believe me, believe me when I say I'm on the same page as you guys. I did not like losing to the team up north. Nobody does. But I even thought about this too. When we lost that game, it was terrible to lose, but we had so much going for us. So what? We lost another game. I know it's a rival game. Nobody wants to lose a rival game. Nobody wants to lose any game of the year, especially as much as a heated rivalry as OSU and Michigan have. But that's if you dwell on that loss, if you're in Ohio State's shoes and Ryan Day's shoes, if you dwell on that loss, your season's over. You go from that game, you're not going to make the Big Ten, the conference championship. So you might as well forget that. But your next goal now in life is to move forward and do something in the playoffs. That's all you have left to do. You don't have another choice. It's either that or you roll over and just take the loss and just call the season quits. So I do like what Ryan Day did. He rallied behind his team and got those guys to believe and bite in that it's not the end of the world to lose one game. Now, granted, I know we've lost that game 4 years running. It is what it is. It's not something that I'm happy about, but at the same time, it's not something to be upset about either, especially this year winning the national championship. And my biggest point that I wanted to make here was a lot of people want Ryan Day fired from Ohio State University because he can't beat Michigan. I am not one of those people. If you're one of those people, I'd love to kind of hear where your headspace is, but everybody says the same thing. It's because we're Ohio State. You can't go and be an Ohio State coach if you can't beat Michigan. If you can't do this, you can't be coach, which doesn't make sense to me. Who gives a fuck? Who gives a flying fuck who you lose to? That's not how you achieve a long-term goal. Your long-term goal at the end of the season, at the beginning of the season, is to win the national championship. You want to get from point A to point B. Now, there are some hiccups that happen between point A and point B, but if you can still get to point B in the end of the day, who fucking cares? I don't give a shit who we lost to. So everybody's saying that Ryan Day's a shitty coach, can't win over Michigan. It is what it is. I ran some statistics here. Ryan Day has coached at Ohio State for 7 years. Ryan Day is 70-10 in his winning percentage. Now, I don't remember. Yeah, I'm assuming that I have that with the national championship game because I put down the percentage of that is 87.5% win success rate for Ryan Day's coaching and won one national championship out of 7 years. Urban Meyer, who a lot of people thought was an amazing coach for Ohio State, granted, he did beat Michigan more times than he lost to him, but was 83-9 and had a 90.2% win rate. So you went from a 90.2% rate with Urban Meyer to an 87.5% win rate with Ryan Day, and both coaches have won national championships. So explain to me how this makes sense. You think Urban Meyer is such a great coach, which he is. Don't get me wrong. Urban Meyer is a great coach. I'd love to have him back as a coach on the Ohio State football team. But I believe Ryan Day is just as good as Urban Meyer. And my opinion may not mean anything to you guys. Maybe you think it's fucking crazy. But I just think that the big game that everybody puts on it does carry a lot of weight. Don't get me wrong. But it's not do or die. It doesn't mean that Ryan Day has to lose his job because he can't beat one football team. It doesn't matter. It wasn't 100% that guy's fault either. In case you haven't figured it out, it takes a whole team to lose a football game. It doesn't just take one person to lose a game. If you came from a sports background, you know what I'm talking about. You've heard this 1,000 times before. If you didn't come from a sports background, if you never played football or baseball, it might be a little bit confusing, but it's just not something that happens. One person doesn't lose a game. It takes a whole team. It takes a whole coaching staff. It takes a whole unit to lose a game. So I don't think Ryan Day carries any weight on his shoulders. That guy should hold his head high and should be extremely proud for what he's done. I love what he said when it's Ohio against the world because I honestly believe it's the football team, the Ohio State football team, versus the world sometimes. Like even your fan base is going to throw you under the bus, which a lot of people did. A lot of people wanted Ryan Day to lose his job because he can't be Michigan. So I think it's the Ohio State football team versus the world. It's not the fans. It's not those guys dug deep and did something amazing with what they have. And I couldn't be more happy in the way that they performed. I'm glad they did what they did. Glad to be national championships. I know friends of mine that are Irish fans and just was really hoping for another outcome. I can't say anything bad about Notre Dame. I think they played a great game. I really do. I just know that if Ohio State was going to come out and play the way that they did through the national championship and continue that role, I had no doubts in them. I knew they were going to win that game. And I'm glad that they did pull it out. So congratulations to all those guys. And last but not least, the NFL. I know a lot of people are not Kansas City Chiefs fans. I am not a pro football fan, period. I do follow some players that I really enjoy watching, but I'm not so much as I'm going to pick this team and I'm going to watch this team because I love this team. I don't really care. I've been playing a lot of fantasy football over the last couple of years, and that's kind of what it's taught me. So there's really no point in picking a team. I just pick players and hope that they do well. When it came down to it, of course, I want to see the Ohio teams do something. So I would have liked to have seen the Browns or the Bengals get in, but obviously neither one of those things happened. When it came down to the division championships, I thought the Eagles were going to win over Washington. I think the point spread in New York was only 6 points for that. I wasn't sure. I hadn't really watched Washington a whole lot this year because I didn't have any of their players on my fantasy. But just knowing who the Eagles were, I thought Jalen Hurts was going to do really well. I've seen how he was doing in the playoffs also, and was hoping it would be a decent game. Turned out to be a blowout for the Eagles, which I'm super happy for. I'm glad they're back and going to the Super Bowl again. When it came down to the Bills and the Chiefs, I knew that game was going to be close. I know Vegas had that as a 1-point spread, so I knew that game was going to be close. Watched the first bit of it because Kristen told me at week 3, week 4 of the regular season, she said, I think the Bills are going to make the Super Bowl. And I really didn't. That's not so far-fetched as to not believe. I really thought they were a good team. I thought they had their shit together. I was wondering if they were going to make it and how far they were going to go. And then to find them in the division championship game versus Kansas City, I thought, well, I'll stay up and watch a little bit of the game. And I think we watched up until halftime. The Bills just did not look good coming out on their first couple drives. It just looked really shaky. It looked like their nerves were getting to them. And I think that's what ultimately hurt them. I didn't watch the second half of the game. I need to go and watch the highlights of it to see if there was anything more or less that happened. But it's crazy to see just a couple years ago, the rematch back this year where you have Kansas City and the Eagles are playing for the Super Bowl. My early pick, I'm one of those people, I don't hate Kansas City just because of who they are and because they have Taylor Swift following them. I'd like to see the Eagles win. You know, Kansas City's won 2 in a row. Granted, it would be cool to see them have a three-peat. But at the same time, I also think the Eagles have earned it. And I hope that they get there to the Super Bowl. They realize, hey, we had this shot once and we lost it. And I hope they come out. I hope they play a great ball game. I hope it's a close game at least. I hope to watch it and enjoy it. But I hope that the Eagles come out on top and win the 2025 Super Bowl. Super Bowl 59, I think it is, if I'm not mistaken. 60 be next year. So looking forward to see how that works too. But all good things. I know a lot of people say all the NFL's rigged, college football's rigged. I don't believe any of that shit. It'd be super hard to rig it, in my opinion. I think you'd have to have so many fucking people involved, and for one person not to slip and snitch. There's snitches all over this fucking world, and it don't take much to get somebody to snitch about some stupid shit. So I don't think any of it's rigged. I just think it's fucking crazy how some things come out. It is what it is, but hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. It really wasn't much of anything to talk about. Hopefully I'm going to have better shit next podcast. I'd like to get some more interviews set up. I know I need to get working on that. I got a couple people in mind that I'm trying to get a guy here from work to do it, but I can't fucking talk him into it. He just will not give me the time of day, which I understand. Some people are nervous about doing this because they get nervous about public speaking. They think it's what it is, but like, I just enjoy doing it. I really do. I took time out of the day. I was like, I need to get a podcast out just because I know I haven't put anything out. I'm trying to be consistent. Don't get mad at me. I'm really trying, but with the life that I live, it's hard to be consistent with anything, really. I mean, I try to do the best I can with everything, but sometimes consistency is not one of my big priorities, or I'm not the greatest at consistency. But thank you guys for sticking around with me. I appreciate you. And until next time, you already know what it is. Just stay wobbled for me. It ain't that hard to do. Take care, guys.